Good afternoon and welcome to this webinar on manual handling hazards and risks of the controls. My name is Ben Pollard and I will be looking after the technical aspect of this webinar today. You will notice a chat box in the top right corner of your screen. Should you have any technical issues during this webinar, you can ask any questions and I will respond directly back to you. Please can I ask that you refrain from sending messages in the chat box unless they are to do with any issues that you are having. I only say this as the chat box can get quite busy otherwise. Your speaker today is Jane Beckmann, who is an inspector with the Health and Safety Executive who leads on manual handling in construction. Jane has worked for HSE for over 24 years, inspecting a wide range of sectors including local authorities, food factories, manufacturing, fairgrounds and construction. For 15 years she has specialised in the construction industry, both as a frontline inspector and more recently in a strategic role focusing on health risk management. She has experience of a wide range of construction health issues and is here today to provide you with an insight into the control of manual handling hazards and risks. You will notice a separate Q&A box in the bottom right corner of your screen below the chat box. If you have any questions for Jane during this session, please ask your questions in this box. Jane will answer any questions you have at the end of her presentation. Should we run out of time and she is unable to answer all of the questions, we will provide written answers that will be emailed out after the webinar. I shall now pass you over to Jane and hope you all enjoy the session.
Thank you. Hello everybody. Thanks for that introduction, Ben. I'll be speaking for the next 45 minutes and hopefully there should be some time for questions at the end. I'm going to try and make this talk a little bit interactive, so if you've got pen and paper, be ready to grab it. Right, what I'm going to cover on this talk in the next 45 minutes is why manual handling is back on the HSE agenda. What are musculoskeletal disorders? And that's the last time I'm going to say that. I'll be using MSD next time. Ways of identifying your high-risk tasks and some control strategies. And then I'm going to finish with some current work. So why is manual handling a priority? Handling is the most common rider reported over 7-day injury and sorry, I forgot to move the slide on. And the skilled construction workers have the highest estimated rates of back and upper limb disorder problems. For the estimated, we have to use the labour force survey because they're not always caught in our statistics. Also, 1.2 million working days in construction are lost due to ill health, work-related ill health, and we know about 2/3 of these are due to MSDs. That's over 750,000 days. That is a big problem. So what are MSDs? Well, there are any problems which involve joints, muscles and tendons. The upper limbs involve the neck, shoulders, elbow, wrist and hand, and the lower limbs is hip, knee, ankle and foot, and the back is the rest of it. And things we're looking for things is aches and pains, stiffness, weakness, tingling, numbness, cramp and swelling, all those issues you get with joints and tendons. So for the upper limb disorders, you're looking at things like osteoarthritis, tennis elbow, carpal tunnel syndrome, those sort of things. While the lower limb has similar sort of things like osteoarthritis and beat knee, but they also can have things like varicose veins and stress fractures can involve. The lower, mid and upper back can all be injured. And remember, the limbs are all connected to the back, so it's all interrelated. So what is manual handling operation? Take 30 seconds and write down all the ways a load can be moved by a person. Sorry about that. I can't work these machines. The manual handling regs talks about loads being lifted, lowered, carried, pushed and pulled. And all those methods are frequently used within construction work. So moving on, let's have a look at the ways we can avoid manual handling risks and other health risks as well. Any of you who heard my colleague Chris Lucas's talk last year on dust or have looked at the health risks web pages will know that all the pages are set out in a similar sort of way. That is, assess the risk, control the risk, and then review. So to identify your high risks for manual handling, you need to think about the load. Is it heavy, bulky, sharp edges, difficult to grasp? The task. Are you lifting and lowering high distances, excessive pushing or pulling? Carrying distance, twisting the trunk, stooping. And then on the frequency, the work rate, how often does this task have to be done? Construction, the work area is very significant because of the uneven floors, slippery, variation in the floor levels. Individual capabilities relatively self-obvious, but on other factors, you talk PPE. Now, in construction, PPE is used all the time. Hard hats, safety glasses, safety footwear, and those may affect the way the task is carried out. So how can you look at your high-risk tasks systematically or compare different tasks? HSC has developed two toolkits. We've got the MAC tool, which is Manual Handling Assessment Charts tool, and the ART tool, which is to do with repetitive tasks. There is another one coming called the RAP, which is to do with pushing and pulling tasks, and that will be available in the next few months. These toolkits aren't specifically designed for construction work. They are designed more for factory or more routine works, but they are a useful way for you to identify where your problem areas are. I'm going to have a quick look at a case study now and have a look at how the MAC tool can help you. This beautiful house, it was a grade 2 listed building which has been completely gutted and is now in fit out stage. The house has 3 floors plus an attic, so it's quite a big building. Every window has had a new sash, will have a new sash fitted. When the inspector arrived on site, almost all the windows had been carried up to the rooms they were needed. So that's up 3 floors or even 4 if you're going into the attic. But none of the windows have been installed. So thinking about what we talked about earlier, take a few seconds and write what you need to know to start working out what the problems are with these windows. Okay, what you need to know obviously is the load weight, what the task is, frequency, work area. What the inspector found out is each window weighed between 90 and 120 kilograms, depending where which type of window it was. 2 men carried the windows up the stairs, and if this works, you can. That's one of the stairways, and then they were carrying up these stairs here. So they're quite narrow and quite dark and steep as well. There are over 50 windows to be installed, and I've already said about the work area. So we can use the Mac tool to start identifying which parts of the whole task cause the problem. In good Blue Peter terms, these are the one I prefer earlier. The weight of the windows is obviously high risk, or very high risk, and is in the purple. But the tool also identifies other areas where, such as the carrying distance, the stairs, where they are high risk rather than very high risk. The idea about the Mac tool is it gives you a chance to visualize which parts of the task are high risk, which are awareness, and which are actually not a problem. If you fill in the numerical scores on the right hand side, you can use that, the scores, to identify which different tasks on a big site which should be addressed first. So what happened? Well, the inspector arrived on site, as I said, found out about the weights and served a prohibition notice just to stop work while they started to find out how they could solve the problem. The designer didn't think it was anything to do with them when the inspector went to talk to them. He sent the designs directly to the joiner who made the windows, and the joiner, the windows were delivered complete to the site. Nobody even thought about the weight of the windows, and they just decided that two men could carry them upstairs. What actually happened after that is the windows could be dismantled. You see the photograph where the window's in three places, and this means that the weight of the windows were reduced from 90 to 120 to their individual pieces, which is around about 30 kilograms. Not light, but much better than what it was. Moving on, the other part of any assessment is talk to the workers. It's often they have good suggestions of what is and is not possible. Again, the HSC has got a toolkit called the Leadership and Worker Involvement Toolkit available on the website. And although this is aimed at small companies, it is very useful to show how you can interact with companies. Okay, moving on to control. This is the first and last time you'll hear me talk about law. So the manual handling operations talks about avoiding manual handling, talks about avoiding rather than eliminating, and then to take appropriate steps to reduce injury. So very slightly different to COSH, noise, and the vibration risks. So avoid or eliminate can be done by designing things out or making things so heavy that mechanical lifting has to be used. And also think about, if you are going to use mechanical lifting, there needs to be space for those mechanical aids to be used. And also you can reduce manual handling by using lifting aids such as motor barrows, tile lifters, trolleys, those sort of things. As I said earlier, elimination is things like designing work processes out, designing manual handling out, or changing work processes. So let's have a look at one example of this. This is a hospital radiation room, and there was going to have to be 25,000 lead light blocks, which were about 30 kilograms each. Originally, they were all going to be installed by hand, but a mechanical lifting aid was installed. You could probably perhaps see the photographs on the right-hand side where you got the yellow beam at the top. So they were actually, all the blocks were lifted in by mechanical aid, and it actually finished in a third of the time estimated time, so much quicker, and the payoff in reduction of labour costs paid for the installation of the mechanical aid 10 times over. And the other thing is things like lightweight curbs. They were approved by the relevant authorities, but we're still not seeing the uptake of these. But they're a great way of eliminating manual handling. If you are going to have to do normal sized curbs, curbs and paving can be laid mechanically. To begin with, the curb layers I met were resistant to using mechanical aids. But once they started to become familiar with them and some of the work processes were changed, they much preferred them. Mechanical handling aids for curbs should be the first port of call. The manual vacuum lifters you see more frequently seem to become a bit more common, where you've just got the two guys lifting. I'm not sure why this is, and they shouldn't be used as mechanical aids should be used much more. Remember, if the curb is 75 kilograms, that is red on the MAC terms for a two-man lift. If you add the weight of the manual curb lifter, which can be 15-20 kilograms, then the total weight of the curb and the curb lifter is well into the purple zone. That's why we're saying the mechanical handling should be your first port of call. And obviously what you can do with curbs, you can also do with pavings. I mean, some of the big paving slabs are really heavy. Moving on to blocks, we shouldn't be seeing blocks more than 20 kilograms. There's no reasons why, with all the modern blocks available, that heavier blocks are specified unless they're a very specific reason, such as with the X-ray rooms we were talking about earlier. Now, there's some very easy wins we can get. Is delivering the blocks as close to the point of use as possible by mechanical means, and keeping them dry. Looking at trying to get the work so it's between shoulder and knee height. Again, it reduces the way the brickie uses his body and prevents injuries. And also things like having spot boards where they put their mortar. There's some really good spot boards which you can actually put onto the scaffold, and that makes it adjustable, so it's the bricklayer can actually use the spot board and they can set it to the site best for them. Obviously, blocks do have to be laid at foot level because of the footings foundations, and therefore the rate of lay should be reduced. This actually happens normal as part of the normal work process because they're setting out and making sure the bottom couple of courses are very accurate, so the rate of lay is always lower at that levels. What about plasterboard? These all types of plasterboards you get: standard, fireboard, sound block, lifeboard. Just take 15 seconds and just write down what you think the weight of these boards are for the standard 12 or 1200 by 2400 by 12.5 millimeters. So just write down what you think the weights of these boards would be. So standard starts at 23 kilograms and the weights increase up to the life boards, which are 34 kilograms for the same size and thickness boards. For those who don't know, a life board are the new boards which are becoming a lot more popular, where you can actually hang cupboards onto these boards directly with normal screws, and obviously much more popular in housing for very obvious reasons. The thing about plasterboard is getting it into the right place for installation. For housing projects, particularly the townhouses, but for all of them, moving these boards up 2 or 3 floors, where you're needing 67 boards per floor, is quite onerous on the workers, especially when you've got the very small windy staircases, and often the banisters or any fall protection is removed as well. Some house builders are actually leaving openings in the external walls, so the plasterboards can be loaded mechanically directly to each floor. But that does have to be very well planned in, and sometimes that's not possible. One solution is, if you have got wooden floor, is to use what's called a letterbox, where the boards are fed directly through a slot in the floorboard. Yes, it's still manual handling, and yes, there's still quite a lot of weight, but it does stop people having to carry them upstairs and reduces obviously the lift distance. The one thing everybody has to remember is that letterbox floorboard has to be replaced, otherwise you get squeaky floorboards and everybody complains. For the large commercial and industrial buildings, the boards should be taken as close to the point of use by trolleys. You can see a manual trolley which you just pushed along, but there's some excellent mechanical trolleys which have got a motor which help take the weight to move the boards. And if you do have to move boards individually, then use of these carrying handles makes the carrying of the boards much more ergonomically viable. That's the wrong word, but easier to use, easier to carry. A lot of boards are actually installed on the ceiling, and when you're thinking about, particularly if you're using sound block or fireboards, you're talking 28-30 kilos of board going up. Often you see a guy with them holding them up and screwing them in one-handed. I'm not sure how they do it, but they do. But the board lifters make the job much easier. They're not in common use in the UK. I don't know why. The dry liners say they are slow, and as they're on piecework, it slows everything down. But perhaps once they become more familiar, the increase in installation and the workers will be quicker. And also, it does mean the workers might be able to move their neck and shoulders while they're in middle age, which some of them can't now. These board lifters can go up to about 4.9 metres, so they can do quite a height and should cover a lot of the different ceiling heights in commercial buildings. Moving away from control to the third part of assess, control, review, remember to check that the controls you've put in place are working. Very obvious. And probably most important, that the equipment is well maintained. And the managers and the supervisors know what they should be doing. The review part of any process is so important to find out what worked well and what isn't working well. Moving on to operational guidance. This is everything I've shared to you is information the HSE inspectors are told. On the HSE website, you can get all the operational guidance that was designed for the inspectors, which gives them and understanding what the enforcement expectations are. I'll explain about that in a minute. The idea is that all the decisions HSE inspectors make on site are transparent and it's open for everybody. This is taken from the operational guidance for the manual handling and construction, but there's also OGs for construction dust, noise, vibration, hazardous substances, and they're all available for you. There's a link here which you can get on, and that will take you directly through to the manual handling operational guidance. But the best thing is go on the HSE website, search on OG, construction, and a topic area, and you'll find the appropriate guidance. Part of the guidance will give specific requirements, specific for tasks. So the one you've got an example here is for the manual laying of curbs of 70 kilograms by 2 persons. And when there's actually no controls in place, so the men, and they usually are men, are lifting the curbs from ground level and placing them ground level. And you can see here that the HSE experts think the risk gap is extreme, that there's ways of doing this work which is safe, and the way which is currently being used is unsafe. I'll try to explain that better in a minute. This slide here shows what's called the enforcement management model, and basically what it identifies is the expected standards on site and the actual standards on site. So for the example I used earlier with the slide before about manual handling of curbs of 70 kilograms, we say it's extreme, it's in the red band, because if you use mechanical handling, which is what should be used, you would solve the problem. Moving on, if you only take one thing from this talk, remember the construction health risk web pages. There's a lot of information about managing the health risks in construction, including manual handling. But as I was saying earlier, you can have there's stuff on dust, noise, and some of them have specific task information as well. So, as I said, I recommend you go and have a look at these. It should give you a lot of the answers. HSE also publishes a lot of what's called busy builder sheets. These are 2 pages. These are front pages from 2 different documents, this manual handling and plasterboard handling. And on the back, which is probably what I should have put in, you've got just photographs of what's good practice and what's bad practice. They're designed actually for the smaller builders, what we call the one-man band, what we'd call busy builders. But it also gives you very good information about what is available. Again, this is all available on HSE website, so have a look around for it. There is the construction information sheet on curb laying. So there's a lot of information available that you can use. The manual handling operations guidance for the actual regs is actually being revised, and it's going to be published very shortly, hopefully in the next few months. It is updated, and they also have incorporated the Mac Art and the RAP tool also will be incorporated into it, so you'll have all that information directly in one document. The Mac Art and RAP tools will all be available as an interactive toolkit on the HSC website as well. I mean, Mac and Art already there. The wrap will be available as soon as this guidance is published as well. Moving on to some current work. As you will probably be aware, the strategy Help Great Britain Work Well was published recently in the last few weeks. There are 6 themes, and for us, tackling ill health is probably the one most significant for the team I work with. I mean, we can be proud of Britain's record on work-related health and safety. It is one of the best in the world. But to get any more improvements, it's up to industry now to lead the way, to try to make those improvements. You know, industry knows where the problems are, and they've probably got much more answers than HSC has. So it's very much a case of working together, but with industry taking the lead to start improving it even more, particularly on the ill health aspects. Going back directly into construction, the last 5 or 6 years has seen an increased interest on the health agenda, particularly for the large projects, large contractors and the trade associations. This led to the Construction Industry Advisory Committee, otherwise known as CONIAC, members being challenged to think health. This happened in March 2014 by a former Chief Inspector of Construction called Heather Bryant. The aim of the Think Health Challenge was to secure the improvements in preventing occupational disease akin to what happened in safety management over the last 10-15 years. If you think about back in the early 2000s, the number of fatalities on construction sites was well over 100, and they've dropped down significantly now. But the number of people being made ill is still very, very high. The Health and Construction Leadership Group was set up as part of the Think Health Challenge. And they've got 3 main goals. They've got healthy by design, which is really getting health issues particularly designed out right at the beginning so that people just aren't exposed to any health issues. Sharing successes, and this is where companies learn from each other. If a construction company finds a really good way of doing something which reduces ill health or even safety, then that information is shared amongst other companies, so everybody improves. And the last one is industry data. As I said right at the beginning of the talk, ill health is very difficult to track, and it's almost impossible by just tracking it by riddles. A lot of companies have information about ill health, people being off sick, insurance claims, and if we can get all that information together in one place, then we've got a baseline to find out where the problems are now, and we can track how things improve in the future. The Health and Construction Leadership Group organised a health summit in January this year, where the CEOs from all the major contractors and trade bodies got together for a morning and pledged their support to improve occupational health in construction. At the end of this conference, a video was played, which we're going to now have a look at now. Thanks. Thank you. Right. There's quite a few questions coming in, so I shall try and answer them as we go along. Let's have a look. I've got a question here which says, do you find that manual handling risk assessments generally lag behind working at height and confined spaces? And the answer is yes. My experience that manual handling assessments are poor and often not done. So unfortunately, yes, I do agree with that. Another question. With regards to the work and the load object, do you find these are pre-assessed well? I'm thinking more about SMEs. I can't deny that they're very rarely looked at. I mean, the example I gave of the windows at the big refurbishment of the house was basically nobody even thought about it, the weight. It was just not even thought about. And so, yeah, but that's not only, I find that on lots of different projects, unfortunately. Right, there's a look at another one. On the window case study, I'm reading this straight off. How do we offset the weight of the windows against dribbling or quadrupling the trips up and down stairs? Which action do you see as the most risk? Yeah, that's an interesting one. Well, to be quite honest, obviously the best way was actually get the windows delivered straight up onto the floors in the first place mechanically. Had people thought about it, then the windows could have been put in through the openings, but that wasn't done. The up and down the stairs, yes, that is always an issue, but it's probably going up and down stairs with lighter weights, even though you're having to do more trips, is probably better than carrying those heavy windows up the stairs. A question about the new manual handling guidance to replace the ACOP. As far as I remember, and I will double check on this, the guidance, the manual handling guidance has never been an ACOP. It's only ever been guidance, and the new one will not be a guidance. Will not be an ACOP. It's just guidance. Another one here. Why haven't HSE taken more designers to task over the lack of applying principal prevention and addressing the manual handling issue at source? Yes, interesting one. I think it's one of those things that with the new CDM guide regulations in place, then perhaps we'll see a lot more designers being taken issue at. Let's see what happens. Copy of the video on the very last, the slide before last. I can go back under Be Inspired. You'll see a link. That link is available on the web, and you can just click on it and you can use it. It's freely available. Where am I on these? I've got to read them first before I read them out, because then I know what I'm talking about. Yeah, there's a problem about manual handling of the scaffolders. Yes, this is a big issue. It's something. It's one of those things where the scaffolders, especially when they're humping up the poles, sometimes quite a few floors. It's amazing the weights of those 21 footers. I don't know how they do it. Obviously, if you're getting the scaffold poles delivered high up is necessary, rather so they don't have to be humped up floor to floor, is a very obvious one. It's not an easy one to solve, and if anybody's got a bright idea out, I expect there'll be something you can make a lot of money out of that. But there's no easy answer to that at the moment, and that's not being flippant. It's just one of those things. Do you want to start deleting some of them so I can? Oh, he has. So There's so many questions. I'm just trying to know where I've been. There's a question about the plasterboard sheets being reduced in size. Yep, it's something that HSC is looking in. Not only in HSC, I shouldn't say that. Industry and HSC are looking at the moment to see if we can reduce the size of plasterboards from 1200 to 900. 900 boards are available, but obviously you need more than 900 boards to fill a wall, and we're looking at the practical ways that we can do this. Sorry, I'm lost where I am. Yes, somebody has said, yes, it highlights the importance of risk assessment being done prior to a task. Very much so. If we can get the assessments done first, at least you can identify the areas where there's going to be problems and maybe able to design things in or out. There's talking about the cost recovery against the PN. I haven't got the details for that, and actually but I think actually the cost recovery was against the main contractor and the designer. I think it went both ways thinking about it. Somebody says, do the tools help assess the risk where the job has multiple types of manual handling with odd loads, specifically in the events industry? I think the answer is to it, yes. I mean, the tools were designed very much for more routine tasks in factories and things like that. So they're not quite so easy to use in construction or event industry. But I think what the thing about the tools is once you get your eye in, you can actually look at the assessments. You can see where the problem areas are. That's what I found when I've been using them. So yes, you can use them for other areas. It says, what is the expected competency of the manual handling trainers instructors in construction? I'll have a think about that and come back to that one. So, right, another one. What would you expect to see in detailed manual handling assessments on site in file current and signed off? Or would electronic versions be okay? I think it's like anything with assessments, is that it doesn't matter where they're held, as long as somebody's done them and told the workers. So someone's looked at what the problems are and worked out what the controls are. You know, and that's the whole point. You know, electronics fine as long as the workers know what's expected of them, and either they've seen the electronic version or something like that. It's very much making sure any assessment, be it manual handling, noise, vibration, COSH, they're no good if they're just sitting on a piece of paper as a piece of paper or on an electronic device and no one knows about them. It's making sure the assessment's done and the controls which are needed are put in place. Any views to the manual handling of still fixers? Ooh, difficult one. It's one of those things. It's just there's so many variations about that. I think that's going to be a really difficult one to answer without seeing a specific answer. Right, let's have a look at this one. Right, it says if the Mac tool and others are as detailed in this webinar are used, would they deem to be suitable if HSC were to visit the site? My concern is each individual have their own interpretation of how this is completed. You may find some are different if put side by side by the same activity. Yeah, and the answer is absolutely yes. If my colleague and I both did the Mac on the on the windows, and we came up with slightly different answers. But the point is that you've done the assessment, you've looked at the problem, and most importantly, you're doing something about those high-risk tasks. So, if you have used a Mac tool on site and you're doing something to control the issue, then, you're doing a huge amount. Oh, I've lost that one. Where's it gone? I don't know. Sorry. Sorry, I'm having a problem with the using my mouse here. No, it's that one there. Right. Okay. Right, there's another one. Is there any movement on manufacturers being more responsible for providing materials that aren't as awkward or heavy to use, rather than leaving the designers and contractors to work it out? I suppose you could say that, manufacturers are in some ways just responding to what they've been asked to do, particularly on things like the plasterboard is a real good example. That, if more people want to use smaller boards, then manufacturers will provide the smaller boards. So we always do talk to manufacturers. They're part of the supply chain. Not really answered that question, sorry. Yeah, how are we doing for time? So Ben's looking after the mouse now to get the right things. Done that one. Right. It says, is the Crossrail feedback and review going to pinpoint manual handling risk and intervention leading to best in class for construction? We are talking to Crossrail. I don't know specifically about this point, but the answer is I expect it will be. But that's something which my colleagues are dealing with directly with Crossrail. But I will ensure that I get the manual handling problems or issues. I find out what they were. We've done that one. Sorry, I forgot to delete all the questions, so I'm not sure what I've answered on it. Right. Okay. Would it be more appropriate to employ the Mac etc. tool at the design stage? Absolutely. There's no reason why the designers can't look at these. I don't think we need to call them design Mac wrap and art tools, but I think it's, if the designers were aware of what they were asking the workers to do, then they might think about it. The windows was a prime example that had they looked at even just the weight, they could have made changes quite easy, quite and early on. I've got two questions. Are these board lifters covered by Lola and by Pure? The answer is they're definitely covered by Pure, and I'm not sure about Lola, but it's one thing I will double check on and come back to you. So can we keep that one open? Another question, what would the HSE response be if a thorough manual handling is done, but they did find it was ignored? Oh, that frequently happens on site. I think the action is the inspector found it was it depends who's ignoring it. There's lots of situations, but yeah, if a manual handling assessment's been done and then perhaps the control's not in place or the control's not being used, then an inspector on site would certainly deal with it however they thought was appropriate. It depends on the situation. It's a general question, so you've got a general answer. We've done that one. Yes, we've done that one. We've done that one. Sorry, folks. We've done that one. It's my fault. I didn't do the. There's a question that scaffolding should be manufactured as safe to lift, and that's an interesting one because there's the design aspect of scaffolding for its strength, and I'm certainly not qualified to even go into that line. That's a structural engineer's answer, so I can't really tell you more than that. The question, what do I see as the biggest issues currently with manual handling construction? I suppose the biggest issue is not being addressed. That's a slightly flippant answer, I do apologise. That, manual handling construction is just almost ignored. We've got a few examples where glazing panels for internal glazing, the little meeting room pods you often get on site, if on a building which is being refurbished and can't get the glazing panels in lifts, so they're humped, and humped's the right word, by people up 4, 5, 6 floors. So I think manual handling in general is just not dealt with in construction at all. It's guys just get on with it and do it. We've done that one. Sorry, folks. Done that one. Right. Right, I think we've got all the most of the answers have gone. Questions have gone through. I will double check about the board lifters being covered by Lola, and thank you very much.
Okay, thanks everyone for attending. Obviously, a big thank you to Jane for coming and delivering that presentation for us. It's really very kind of her. We're going to leave the chat open just for a couple more minutes. This just allows you to, if you've got any all of a sudden last minute questions that you think about, you can pop them in. Otherwise, hopefully we will see you next time. And thank you all for attending.